Have you ever looked up at the northern lights and wondered if they're alive, if the shimmering curtains of green and violet are more than just charged particles dancing in the sky? You stand beneath them now, your breath frosting in the air, your pulse slow, your thoughts strangely ancient. The silence feels full, like something listening back. Each flicker across the heavens seems to whisper, "Come closer." You shift your weight on the frozen ground and feel the pull of that light as though it remembers your name from before you were born. Somewhere between awe and cold, you laugh. Surely you think this is just atmospheric science? Yet part of you, perhaps the oldest part, doesn't quite buy it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Maybe together we'll find out how far north our imaginations can go. The aurora stretches wider, painting your skin in soft jade. The snow crunches underfoot as you move forward, guided not by a compass, but by instinct. Somewhere beyond the glow lies a place the ancients swore was real, a continent of eternal light, hidden just beyond the reach of maps. The Greeks called it Hyperborea, literally beyond Boreas, the north wind. Herodotus mentioned it half seriously, half as myth, writing that sacred offerings traveled there by invisible hands. Historians still argue whether he was teasing or whether he knew something others had forgotten. Imagine it a land where winter never bites, where daylight never fades, and where mortals lived without disease, age, or sorrow. Pindar the poet claimed the Hyperboreans spent their days in music and sacrifice to Apollo, the god of light. And there's your first surprise, Apollo. The golden southern deity wasn't born in Delphi at all, but was said to visit Delphi each year from Hyperborea, traveling in a chariot drawn by swans. A migration of light itself. The wind brushes your face like the sigh of that myth. You taste salt in the air, not from an ocean, but from memory. Modern scholars dismiss it as poetic geography. Yet Arctic explorers once reported strange mirages, glimpses of green valleys shimmering above the polar ice. Could Hyperborea have been a distorted vision of lands glimpsed through refraction? Or something else, something that retreated when the world turned away from the old gods? You take another step north, though the compass needle spins uselessly. The stars swirl above in circles, and time feels uncertain. Somewhere deep beneath your boots, the planet hums. You sense the vibration through your bones like distant machinery. Science calls it the Earth's microseism, the constant tremor of waves colliding far away. But for a heartbeat, you wonder if it's something else. The heartbeat of an ancient world still alive beneath the ice. There's a story the kind told by explorers who stayed too long in the snow that a person who listens too closely to the aurora begins to hear words. At first whispers, then names. Some say the light is a form of consciousness, a memory of the sun filtered through Earth's magnetic breath. In 1899, Nikola Tesla himself claimed to receive signals from beyond while testing his wireless transmitters under Colorado's thin air. He never said they came from Mars, just that they were not human. Historians still argue whether he'd intercepted radio noise or something older. The northern wind rises. You pull your coat tighter, but it's no use. The cold feels intelligent, as though it's testing your resolve. The ice beneath your feet cracks, revealing faint light below blue pulsating alive. You kneel and touch it. It hums like a string pulled taut between centuries. It's the same hum that ancient tribes of Siberia described when they sang of a sky gate beyond the Arctic Circle, a place where souls of shamans ascended to speak with the star people. You hesitate. Then you smile because part of you knows this is how myths begin, not in temples or libraries, but in the moment someone looks too long at something inexplicable. Somewhere in the distance, a flock of white birds rises from the snow. They fly in a perfect circle, then vanish into the aurora's veil. For a moment, you think they're swans. Hyperborea. The name lingers in your mouth like the aftertaste of lightning. You can almost hear a language beneath it, soft, vowel-heavy, sung rather than spoken. Some researchers have pointed out curious similarities between the word and the Sanskrit uttara, north, or even the Old Norse baya meaning settlement. Coincidence? Maybe. But then again, myths travel like seeds carried by winds no one can measure. A sudden gust knocks you off balance, and for a split second the aurora brightens until you see shapes inside it. Towers, domes, bridges of impossible grace suspended between lights. The image flickers, fades. Your rational mind insists it's pareidolia, your brain forcing patterns into chaos. But another part whispers, maybe it's not your imagination that's reaching. Maybe it's Hyperborea remembering you. You laugh again, mostly to stay sane. Sure, you mutter, next thing I'll see is a glowing moose with a PhD in metaphysics. And yet humor feels like the only defense against awe. The air is too still, too aware. You sense that the aurora isn't just watching, it's waiting. You begin to walk, and the ground feels different now, warmer, softer. Snow gives way to frost-dusted grass. The air carries a strange scent, honey, ozone, pine resin. You look up and realize the aurora is no longer above, but all around you, forming a slow-moving tunnel of light. Ahead lies the faint outline of land rising from mist cliffs, gleaming like marble in perpetual sunrise. The land that shouldn't exist. You stop, you breathe, you step forward, and the moment your foot touches that light, the world changes pitch. The hum becomes music, slow, mathematical almost, welcoming. Whatever Hyperborea is, it isn't just a myth anymore. It's here. It's awake. And it's been waiting for you. The light steadies as your vision adjusts, and suddenly you realize that the world around you is no longer the Arctic wasteland you came from. The air carries warmth not from the sun, which you still can't find in the sky, but from the very ground beneath your feet. The snow has melted into soft, dew-slick grass, and every blade glows faintly, as if reflecting a dawn that never ends. Somewhere behind the veil of clouds, the light bends, refracts, folds in on itself, yet it never fades. You've stepped into the myth. Hyperborea stretches before you, silent and radiant. The horizon curves strangely, as though the earth itself is slightly too large, too gentle in its arc. There are rivers of liquid gold, their surfaces rippling like sheets of glass. The mountains wear crowns of perpetual mourning. You blink and whisper the question every explorer carries in secret. Is this real? Ancient Greek writers described Hyperborea as a paradise beyond the north wind, a land untouched by plague or war. Herodotus claimed that offerings were carried there beyond the land of the Isodones, though he never met anyone who'd been. Pindar said that Apollo visited this land every 19 years to renew his youth. Historians still argue whether these stories were inspired by vague reports of Arctic summers, those endless daylight months that make the world forget night, or something older buried beneath collective memory. You walk, and the landscape hums like a living circuit. The trees, tall, silver-barked, their leaves shaped like fractal snowflakes, shift slightly as if turning toward you. Their motion makes no sound, yet each movement resonates through your bones. You remember the myth of Aristeas, the Greek poet who vanished in a northern storm and reappeared years later, claiming to have journeyed with the Hyperboreans. He described them as radiant beings, half spirit, half light. Maybe he wasn't exaggerating. Maybe he was only poor at explaining physics in verse. A stream crosses your path. You kneel and dip your fingers in. The water feels lighter than air, colder than thought. You drink half expecting it to freeze your lungs, but instead it fills you with an odd calm, as though your heartbeat has synchronized with the world around you. Some part of you jokes that it's probably full of microplastics, then immediately regrets the thought. Hyperborea doesn't feel like a place where plastic exists. You walk further and structures begin to emerge from the mist. They aren't ruins. Nothing here seems to decay, but they carry the weight of eternity. Pillars of translucent stone rise in perfect ratios, their surfaces etched with spirals, stars and lines that pulse with faint luminescence. They look less like architecture, and more like equations turned solid. The air thrums with resonance. Every step you take hums back in harmonic reply. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote that the Hyperboreans built a great circular temple dedicated to Apollo, adorned with many offerings and continuously filled with music. Scholars have long argued whether he meant Stonehenge or if he was describing something now lost beneath polar ice. But as you stand here listening to unseen choirs vibrating in the air, the idea doesn't feel far-fetched. The temple might not have vanished. It might have waited hidden in light instead of stone. You press your palm against one of the pillars. The surface ripples like mercury, and for an instant you see within it a reflection not of yourself, but of a city in full bloom. Towering spires of crystal rise over canals that shine like liquid dawn. Birds, white, impossibly large, wheel through the sky, leaving trails of rainbow frost. The people below move slowly, their garments shimmering like molten pearl. You can't see their faces clearly, only the sense of calm purpose of a civilization that never learned haste. Your hand slips back, and the vision fades. The pillar becomes stone again, silent and indifferent. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. Somewhere deep inside, curiosity sharpens into reverence. Could such a world have truly existed? Modern science says no. The Arctic, we're told, has always been a realm of ice, its temperature unfit for any civilization to thrive. Yet fringe historians point to old maps and fossil records hinting at warmer epochs. During the Pliocene millions of years ago, forests covered the poles. Mammoths grazed where icebergs now drift, and deep-sea cores reveal traces of tropical pollen sealed under Greenland's frost. Historians still argue whether this means there once was a habitable northern land, or if we're simply desperate to find Utopia, somewhere untouched by history's mistakes. You climb a ridge overlooking the valley. The light there bends again, this time revealing shapes half hidden in the air. They look like ruins seen through heat haze, bridges, terraces, and roads leading to nowhere. When you blink, they're gone. But each time you turn away, the corner of your vision catches a shimmer, as if reality is glitching just slightly out of sync. Maybe Hyperborea isn't a place at all. Maybe it's a state of resonance, a dimension that exists whenever consciousness reaches the right frequency. You laugh softly. If I start talking about vibrational portals, I'm officially one of those people you say aloud. The echo that comes back sounds suspiciously like laughter, too. The ground vibrates beneath your boots, not dangerously, more like a purr. The sensation grows rhythmic, and before you realize it, your steps are falling into time with it. Each beat hums in your chest. You remember a line from Plato. The soul of the world is a harmony. Perhaps in this land the harmony never broke. You find yourself wondering how anyone could ever leave. Maybe that's why no confirmed Hyperborean ruins exist, because those who arrived here never wanted to go back. Or perhaps, as the myths warn, Hyperborea withdraws from those who try to map it, slipping away like a mirage born of light and faith. As twilight, if you can call it that, settles over the valley, the air fills with faint choral tones. The sound comes from nowhere and everywhere, blending with the rustle of leaves. You recognize no words yet, meaning floods through you. Welcome, wanderer of cold blood. You have remembered what was lost. You turn slowly. The aurora above thickens, bending into shapes that almost resemble faces. The gods of the north perhaps peering down with eyes of sunlit ice. Or just your brain firing neurons in pareidolik panic. Either way, it feels sacred. Then footsteps, soft, deliberate behind you. You freeze. The light shifts. A tall silhouette stands at the crest of the hill, too still, too bright to be human. The being raises a hand, and the valley answers with a low chord that hums through your bones. The voice that follows is wind and thunder together. You have crossed the breath of Boreas. Welcome home. And before you can speak, the figure dissolves into light, leaving only warmth in the air and a lingering scent of ozone and myrrh. Whatever this land is, it knows you now. The warmth of that vanished figure lingers, absorbed by the air and by you. Your hands tremble not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of recognition. The valley before you breathes alive in a rhythm too vast to fully grasp. Each pulse of light through the soil seems deliberate, intelligent, and you start to wonder whether this world is not just inhabited, but aware. You descend from the ridge, and the ground shifts subtly beneath your steps. Patterns appear in the earth, spirals, hexagons, and intersecting lines that seem to guide your path. As you follow them, structures begin to materialize through the mist, gleaming white towers rising in geometric harmony, perfectly proportioned, impossibly clean. No signs of erosion, no cracks, no seams where stone should meet stone. These are the works of the builders of Eternal Dawn, and you are standing within their masterpiece. The city stretches before you like an equation carved into reality. Each avenue aligns with celestial markers, the North Star, the tilt of Earth's axis, the path of the sun during the solstice. Even from where you stand, the symmetry is disarming. It feels less like a city and more like a resonating instrument, each wall and dome tuned to a cosmic note. You remember that Herodotus described a circular temple of the sun in the land beyond Boreas, an image that inspired centuries of speculation. Archaeologists still argue whether he meant a physical temple or an allegory of the cosmos. But now, as the golden light reflects off every surface, you can't help thinking that maybe both were true, that Hyperborea's architecture was meant to embody the solar order itself. The buildings hum faintly, their walls vibrating with subsonic resonance. You place your palm on one of them, and the sound deepens a tone so low it feels more than heard. Instinctively, you hum back, and for a moment the frequency matches. The wall brightens under your touch as if responding to your pitch. You pull away, startled, half laughing. So that's what happens when you hit the right note, you whisper. The builders must have understood resonance not just as music, but as the foundation of existence. Legends say the Hyperboreans built using crystal harmonics shaping matter through sound. Modern physics might call it vibrational manipulation or acoustic levitation, but the principle is eerily similar. Even today, scientists have used sound waves to lift small objects in mid-air. The difference is scale and intent. A narrow bridge arches over a channel of luminous water. You cross it hearing faint notes rise with each step, different tones, perfectly tuned, forming a melody under your feet. You realize that the city itself plays you, guiding your movement through its design. Its architecture as symphony, geometry as language. There's something else, too. A strange sense of recognition, as though some memory stirs within you. You've seen this pattern before, maybe in a dream, maybe in the Fibonacci spirals of a seashell. The design feels universal, primal. The same ratios appear in Egyptian temples, in Mayan pyramids, in Gothic cathedrals. Historians still argue whether those connections are coincidence, or proof of a shared, forgotten source. The Hyperborean myth, some whisper, is that source. A light breeze sweeps through the corridor, carrying with it a scent like cold metal and spring rain. You follow it to the central plaza, a vast circle of polished white stone surrounded by tall spires. At its heart stands a structure unlike any other, a perfect sphere hovering just above the ground, spinning slowly, emitting soft light that seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. You approach cautiously, half expecting it to hum hello. Instead, a faint vibration moves through you, a subtle chord composed of 3 notes. Each resonates differently, one in your chest, one in your throat, one behind your eyes. The effect is both soothing and unsettling, like someone tuning your body. Then, in a flash of intuition, you understand this is not a monument. It's a generator, a machine that harmonizes the city's frequencies. Maybe this is how the Hyperboreans sustained eternal daylight, or perhaps how they maintained balance with the planet's energy. A modern scientist might call it a plasma field stabilizer or some advanced electromagnetic construct. You just call it ore. A memory stirs a half-forgotten line from the philosopher Proclus, who hinted that the Hyperboreans lived beneath the pathways of the stars, sustained by the harmony of spheres. Perhaps he wasn't speaking metaphorically. Perhaps their civilization literally lived in resonance with cosmic frequencies, a balance that modern humanity can only simulate in theory. You sit at the edge of the plaza, letting the hum settle through you. The air glows softly, pulsing with invisible mathematics. The feeling is hypnotic, comforting, almost addictive. You could stay here forever, warmed by geometry and silence. But the human mind, being what it is, can't resist asking, how did they build such perfection? What materials don't weather? What energy doesn't decay? A few fringe researchers have suggested that ancient civilizations used sonic tools, claiming that sound frequencies could cut or move stone. In 1957, an engineer in Sweden used sound waves to make limestone blocks levitate only a few centimeters. But still, historians still argue whether the tales of singing stones in old myths refer to this kind of forgotten technology or just poetic imagination. You stand again and look across the plaza. The city extends toward a distant coast where pale light reflects off calm water. Between the towers you glimpse gardens lush green, full of fruit and flowers that seem to glow faintly from within. The builders didn't separate technology from nature, they wove them together. Each structure breathes with the rhythm of trees. Each tree resonates with the hum of the stones. A faint sound, laughter soft and echoing, reaches your ear. You turn, half expecting another luminous figure. But the plaza is empty. Maybe the city itself remembers the people who once filled it. You whisper to the air, "What happened to you?" No answer comes, but a gentle wind rises, moving in spirals around the sphere. For an instant you think you see faces in the light again, smiling, unafraid, fading. It feels like the city is responding, as if trying to tell you that loss and silence were never its language. Hyperborea didn't die. It withdrew, folded back into the rhythm it was born from. As the wind settles, you notice something written along the edge of the plaza, glyphs etched so finely they're almost invisible. You crouch to read them. The script curves like flowing water, each character merging with the next. You don't recognize the language yet, somehow you understand it. The translation forms in your mind. The voice of the sun becomes stone. The breath of the wind becomes form. We build so that light may remember itself. You rise slowly, every word echoing inside you. You finally understand these weren't just builders of temples or cities, they were builders of consciousness. They carved light into form, geometry, into awareness. The The hum deepens once more. The city exhales. Somewhere in that breath you sense invitation and warning, because nothing perfect stays unbroken forever. You move deeper into the city past halls of translucent stone and bridges that float across empty air. Every surface gleams as if carved from frozen sunlight. The silence here is complete, not dead, but intentional, as though the place listens to itself. You stop feeling a subtle shift in the atmosphere, like the moment before a choir breathes in. Something is watching not with eyes, but with attention itself. And then, from the corner of your vision movement, a flicker of white against the endless glow. You turn, and there they are, the sons and daughters of Boreas. At first you think they're illusions born of light. But no, these beings stand solid before you, tall and poised, their skin faintly luminous, reflecting the same hues as the aurora that crowns their sky. Their eyes hold no pupils, only shifting bands of silver and pale gold, like the reflections of distant suns. Their hair, if it can be called that, moves as though underwater, glowing with soft halos of blue. You realize that even the air bends differently around them, thickening like heat haze. They move with no sound, but the air around them vibrates in soft tones. Communication through resonance rather than speech. Yet somehow you understand them, not through words, but through meaning, like music that translates directly into feeling. You sense curiosity from them, and faint amusement, as if they've seen travelers like you before. One of them steps forward, a woman or something that your mind insists must be feminine. Her face carries symmetry beyond human measure, too perfect, almost unbearable to look at directly. She extends a hand long and graceful, her fingers shimmering like glass dipped in starlight. You hesitate only a moment before taking it. Her skin feels cool, yet alive, humming faintly like touching a low-voltage current. And then she speaks not aloud, but inside your mind. You are far from your cycle of night. She says, her voice a melody that seems to exist in every direction at once. Do you remember your origin? You blink. Origin, her smile, is small, patient. Before ice, before dust, before fear. Her words trigger a strange cascade of memories, not personal ones, but collective ancestral. The sensation is dizzying. You glimpse early humans staring northward, drawn to light on the horizon. Hunters following migrating herds under endless twilight. Firelight reflecting in eyes that dream of something greater. The message is clear, the pull toward the north isn't new, it's encoded. Somewhere in your memory you recall a line from the Roman writer Aelian. He described the Hyperboreans as living beyond the reach of winter's breath, nourished by fruits of the earth, and descended from the very wind. Historians still argue whether that wind was a poetic metaphor for divine ancestry or a cryptic reference to a pre-human species adapted to the polar sun. Fringe theorists never shy propose that the Hyperboreans were an ancient branch of humankind. Taller, longer-lived their biology, shaped by solar radiation rather than night cycles. The being releases your hand. Around her, the others begin to hum softly, forming a low harmony that seems to alter the light. The air thickens, and the city responds. Above you, the great spires start to glow in time with the music. Each note births a color. Each color births a memory. You feel it all unfolding around you like a living mural scenes of how these beings came to be. You see a younger earth green and gold beneath vast auroras. You see crystalline structures rising from the tundra, constructed not with tools, but with intention. You see beings of light weaving patterns across the sky, harnessing energy from the planet's magnetic field. They were the first architects merging biology and physics into one harmonious system. Then the vision sharpens. The woman, your luminous guide, walks beside what appears to be a massive circular pool. Above it hovers a sun, not in the sky, but in mid-air, a miniature sphere of radiance. Around it, the Hyperboreans chant in low frequencies, stabilizing it. You realize with awe that this was their second sun, an artificial star they created to sustain eternal daylight. You laugh out loud, unable to help yourself. You built your own sun, you ask. The woman tilts her head. You build fire in the dark, she replies. We built morning that never ends. You can't tell whether it's humility or humor, but her expression carries both. It's oddly comforting. She gestures for you to follow. Together you walk through archways, where beams of light behave like water rippling around your body. The architecture grows more intricate walls, alive with slow-moving sigils, like circuits breathing. You sense energy pulsing through the city, feeding itself, sustaining both matter and consciousness. As you walk, you ask, what happened to your people? Why did you vanish? The woman stops. Her face changes, not sadness exactly, but something older. We did not vanish, she says softly. The world forgot how to hear us. You wait for her to explain, but the silence stretches. Instead, she shows you. She raises her hand and the air shifts again. Another vision. You see the sky darken, the light dim. The planet's axis begins to tilt. Where once the sun circled endlessly, it now sets. The Hyperboreans look upward in confusion as the first true night falls upon their paradise. A voice hers or another's whispers inside your head. The balance broke. The song was lost. We went inward into light that does not fade. You see cities folding into themselves, not collapsing, but phasing out of visible reality, slipping into frequencies imperceptible to the human eye. Hyperborea didn't die, it ascended. You blink and the vision fades. The beings remain faint now, their forms dissolving slightly as though their resonance is slipping away again. You reach out instinctively. Wait. The woman's form flickers. You carry the same spark, she says. Do not let the noise of your age drown it. You feel a sudden ache, a longing for something you can't name. Maybe this is what the poets meant by nostalgia for paradise. The hum fades. One by one, the luminous figures dissolve into air, their tones merging into the wind until only a faint melody remains. You stand alone again in the plaza. The air is colder now, less golden, as though the dream is retracting. But just before it fades completely, a final whisper echoes through your thoughts. The serpent guards the light. Follow the spiral. You turn toward the sound. Across the plaza, carved into the stone, a spiral symbol glows, faintly coiled, intricate, alive. You recognize it instantly. It's older than language, older than religion. It's the symbol that will lead you to the heart of Hyperborea. The wind bites harder now as you move northward, and the light begins to stretch, golden, endless. You can feel that you're crossing the border between history and myth, where cartographers once stopped drawing maps and simply wrote, "Here be gods." Ahead lies the land of the Hyperborean pantheon, the radiant beings said to walk among mortals in a world untouched by decay or sorrow. You breathe the cold air, and it almost feels divine. Ancient Greek writers spoke of the Hyperboreans as a people blessed by Apollo himself, living in perpetual sunlight beyond the north wind. Herodotus mentioned them briefly, as if embarrassed by their perfection, while Pindar wrote songs celebrating their unending joy. But you know better, there's always a catch with perfection. Historians still argue whether Hyperborea was ever meant as a physical place or merely an allegory for a forgotten golden age. Either way, you're here now, walking through the shimmering threshold, where human memory dissolves into myth. The landscape glows. Ice reflects the sun like 1,000 small mirrors, and from their reflections rise figures, tall, calm, and shining faintly as though carved from living crystal. These are the gods of the north, not the Olympians of marble and thunder, but gentler, older deities, who whisper rather than roar. They are gods of silence, endurance, and endless light. You sense their presence not as shapes, but as harmonies resonating in your bones, like the hum of distant stars. The first you meet is Lothis, the Keeper of Dawn. Legends say he stirs the sun awake each morning with a golden harp. His laughter sounds like the crack of melting ice, and when he touches your shoulder, you feel warmth return to your fingers. Some fringe scholars claim that Lothis's myth may preserve memory of an ancient Arctic solar cult, one that tracked the sun's disappearance and return each year. Others dismiss it as poetic fancy. But as the light glows around you, it's hard not to believe. Beside him walks Vera, the weaver of snow. Her breath creates constellations of frost, and her cloak trails auroras in the air. Where she passes, the ice forms spirals like silk embroidery. Some say she's the same as Skadi, the Norse goddess of winter reinterpreted through Hyperborean eyes. But Vera feels different, less vengeful, more contemplative. She represents not the cruelty of cold, but its purity, its power to preserve what the world would otherwise forget. You watch her weave the wind itself into shapes, perhaps the first patterns of written language frozen into the snow. Then comes a shadow in the brightness, Archeon, the god of stillness. His eyes are pale blue, and when he gazes at you, your breath slows until you almost forget how to exhale. They say he guards the threshold between life and timelessness, ensuring that nothing decays but nothing grows either. There's something unsettling about him, a perfect balance that refuses motion. Historians still argue whether Archeon's myth hints at ancient fears of eternal stasis, immortality without change. You find yourself wondering if paradise never changes. Does it slowly become its own prison? A flicker of movement interrupts your thoughts. A small, round creature waddles through the snow, trailing sparkles behind it. It looks suspiciously like a penguin wearing a halo of ice crystals. You can't help but laugh. Even the gods, it seems, have their mascots. Lothis chuckles too, and the sound rolls like thunder across the clouds. Every paradise, he murmurs, needs a fool to remind us what joy feels like. You realize that laughter, even in divine lands, is sacred. Among the Hyperboreans, worship was not sacrifice, but song. Ancient travelers wrote of choirs that echoed across valleys, voices rising at sunrise to greet Apollo's chariot. One Roman historian, always the skeptic, mocked the idea, suggesting these eternal hymns were simply the howls of Arctic wind mistaken for divine music. But you stand here now, hearing the melody that vibrates in the frozen air, and you know he was wrong. The song doesn't come from the wind, it is the wind. There's something strikingly modern about these myths. You think of the human longing for light during dark winters, the way people still chase the northern lights like pilgrims seeking miracles. Maybe the Hyperborean gods were simply reflections of this yearning, personifications of survival and beauty in an unforgiving world. Or perhaps, just perhaps, they were real beings, once luminous travelers, who taught early humans how to endure the long night. Historians still argue whether these legends might preserve faint memories of an ancient polar civilization long before ice swallowed its traces. You pause by a frozen lake that gleams like glass. Beneath its surface, shadows move slow, deliberate. You kneel to look closer and realize they're not fish, but faces. Dozens of serene expressions drift below eyes, closed lips curved in faint smiles. The Hyperboreans, it seems, didn't bury their dead. They encased them in the ice, believing that the cold would keep their souls awake within dreams. You shiver, half in awe, half in unease. It's beautiful and terribly lonely. Lothis watches you. Nothing here truly ends, he says quietly. Even light must rest beneath the horizon before it rises again. His words hang in the air like frost. You think about the cyclical myths of the world, Osiris dying to be reborn, Persephone descending and returning, even the modern idea of stars collapsing only to ignite again. Every mythology from Egypt to the Arctic seems obsessed with renewal. Maybe immortality isn't about never dying, it's about always returning. And yet beneath this serenity, you sense something stirring, a silence too deep, too deliberate. Vera's aurora flickers slightly, and the air feels heavier. You recall a rumor from later texts that the Hyperborean gods vanished not because of death, but because of stillness. They became too perfect, too balanced until motion itself forgot them. The sun they loved most simply moved on. You glance again at Archeon, and for a heartbeat, his perfect stillness feels like mourning. Perhaps even gods can fade not in destruction, but in peace too long sustained. You keep walking. The light shifts lower, bending through crystals, scattering rainbows across the horizon. The frozen lake hums faintly, as if remembering. Somewhere in the distance, a single note from Lothis's golden harp rises, threads through the aurora, and disappears into the north wind. You can't help but smile. It's both a beginning and an ending. And though your feet crunch through ancient snow, you realize you're not just exploring myths, you're walking through humanity's own reflection of hope, frozen in light. The horizon dims not into darkness, but into a kind of pale twilight that never fully commits. You've stepped into the domain of transition, where myths begin to bleed into memory, and the gods start to look suspiciously human. The radiant perfection of Hyperborea gives way to the soft melancholy of departure. You can almost feel time returning, seeping in like thaw water under old ice. In the distance, a low hum vibrates through the frozen air. Mechanical, rhythmic. It's not divine song anymore. It's the sound of tools of effort, of civilization returning to motion. The Hyperboreans, it seems, had builders among them, architects who tried to anchor eternity in stone and ice. The ancient Greeks told of gleaming temples where the sunlight never failed to reach no matter the season. Historians still argue whether such temples could have existed in the far north, where the sun sometimes vanishes for months. Some claim they were metaphors for solar calendars or symbolic houses of light, but others whisper that remnants of such structures may still sleep beneath the Arctic tundra. You walk toward what looks like the remains of one white monoliths half buried in frost. They lean together like broken harp strings, each one humming faintly when the wind passes through. You place your hand on one, and the vibration travels up your arm, a deep, low note, not unlike the sound of a giant's heartbeat. It's not just architecture, it's resonance. These stones were tuned. You can almost hear a scale forming as the gusts shift pitch. Maybe the Hyperboreans didn't just build temples, they built instruments large enough to play the wind itself. One ancient source, Alien, wrote that Hyperborean music could calm storms and even heal wounds. Modern scholars scoff, of course. Yet acoustic archaeologists have discovered something uncanny. Some Neolithic structures in the British Isles do have resonant properties, amplifying certain frequencies that can affect human brainwaves. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe echoes of a northern art once carried southward by memory and migration. Historians still argue whether these sound temples were just lucky design or a lost science of vibration. The snow begins to fall again, thin as ash. You catch flakes on your gloves and notice they're oddly hexagonal geometric, as if shaped deliberately. You look closer, and realize each flake has a faint symbol within it, like writing too small to read. For a fleeting moment, you wonder if snow itself could be a language, a message encoded in frozen geometry. Then you laugh, half in awe, half because your brain just tried to imagine decoding winter. Somewhere you think a linguist just fainted from excitement. As you walk deeper into the ruins, faint carvings emerge on the pillars, spirals, suns, circles with rays that interlock like clockwork. You trace one, and it seems to shift under your touch. The ice refracts your reflection into multiple faces, each slightly older, slightly changed. For a moment you see yourself wearing fur-lined robes and holding a glowing staff. It's gone in an instant, but the image lingers in your mind like déjà vu. It reminds you of an idea some fringe researchers adore, that certain ancient sites can trigger ancestral memory, unlocking genetic echoes of forgotten times. Most historians dismiss this as pseudoscience, but even Carl Jung hinted at something similar, an inherited collective unconscious. Maybe what you're feeling isn't imagination. Maybe it's recognition. You pause before what appears to be an altar, a simple slab of translucent ice shot through with veins of light. No idols, no offerings, just reflection. The Hyperboreans, it seems, didn't worship images. They worshipped illumination itself. You lean closer, and the glow intensifies, showing not gods or angels, but landscapes, frozen seas, mountains under aurora, and a city of spirals half sunk in snow. You realize with a shiver that the light doesn't come from above, it's rising from below, as if the ice remembers the sun it once trapped. And then a whisper. Nothing built from light can stay in shadow. The voice isn't outside, it's inside your head, clear, melodic. You turn, but there's no one there, just the faint laughter of the wind. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's madness. Either way, you answer softly, I know. Far off, the sound of cracking ice echoes. A glacier is shifting. It's the slowest catastrophe imaginable. But it feels personal. You imagine the Hyperborean city beneath it, its towers bending under pressure, its luminous streets dimming as the ice sealed over them. Historians still argue whether climate shifts, tectonic changes, or myths of flood and frost hint at a real ancient cataclysm near the Arctic Circle. Atlantis has its ocean. Hyperborea has its ice. Both tell the same story, brilliance, then burial. You smile at the thought. Humanity's oldest pattern: build, rise, vanish, repeat. Even our myths can't escape gravity. You brush snow off a fallen column and find an engraving that looks suspiciously like a spiral galaxy. You tilt your head. So they knew the cosmos too, huh? You mutter. A snow hare nearby flicks its ears, unimpressed. And here comes your third joke of the evening. Guess even the gods had that one friend who said, "Actually, it's all connected," and wouldn't stop until everyone left the temple. You laugh quietly to yourself, but then something changes. The hum from the pillars grows louder, the snow's rhythm synchronizing with your heartbeat. The ground seems to pulse beneath your boots. You realize the temple isn't dead, it's sleeping. The vibrations increase, resonating through the frozen earth. You hear notes now, soft, precise, like a melody assembling itself out of the air. The monoliths are singing. It's beautiful, too beautiful. The sound fills the valley, rising in layers, until even the aurora above seems to shimmer in harmony. You close your eyes. Every cell in your body vibrates in tune. For a moment you understand everything: the gods, the builders, the longing for endless light. It's all music. Existence itself, a frozen symphony waiting for a listener. Then silence. The hum stops as suddenly as it began. The snow settles. The air returns to its usual stillness. You open your eyes, and find the ruins unchanged, as if nothing had happened. But you know better. You feel lighter, clearer. Somewhere deep within, the melody remains. You take one last look at the temple and whisper, "Thank you." The wind answers, carrying a single word that might be "remember." You start walking again northward, still toward a glow on the horizon that no longer feels like sunlight, but something older, deeper. The gods of the north may have vanished, but their echo, the resonance of their light, still sings through the world. You can hear it if you listen closely enough. The path ahead tilts upward now, carved into the side of a glittering ridge where the snow glows faintly blue. You climb slowly, boots crunching in rhythm. Breath-forming small clouds that rise like ghosts and vanish into the thin air. You are ascending toward what the ancient poets called the heart of Hyperborea, a place they described as both a mountain and a mirror. They said the gods gathered there when the sun reached its highest arc to gaze upon themselves reflected in eternal ice. You wonder not for the first time if that was ever meant to be metaphor, or if this mountain truly was their cosmic observatory. At the summit, the world feels weightless. The light here doesn't come from any single source. It seeps from everywhere, ground air, even the shadowed corners of your thoughts. The silence has a texture thick and expectant, as though waiting for a secret to be spoken aloud. And in that pause, the line between the sacred and the scientific begins to blur. You remember a passage from Aristotle's Lost Works, quoted later by Diodorus Siculus. The Hyperboreans dwell beyond the Riparian mountains, where the air itself sings with clarity, and from their land the moon appears close enough to touch. Historians still argue whether this was poetic exaggeration or a memory of real polar phenomena. Perhaps the eerie brilliance of the midnight sun, or the magnified size of celestial bodies near the horizon. But here now, standing in this blinding glow, the moon does feel close enough to touch. As you reach the top, you find a flat plateau of glassy ice veined with gold lines that spiral outward from a central circle. It looks like both a ritual site and an instrument, a map of energy more than geography. You crouch, brushing frost away, revealing markings that resemble the constellations. There's Orion, faint but unmistakable, and near it a cluster you don't recognize. A strange configuration of stars forming an upward-pointing triangle. Some modern fringe theorists claim the Hyperboreans were astronomers so advanced they aligned their cities with constellations we've since forgotten, perhaps ones visible only before the Earth's axis shifted. Others suggest they came from the stars themselves, citing myths of shining beings descending on chariots of light. Historians still argue whether these were metaphors for meteor showers, ancient visitors, or something far less earthly. You smile faintly. The line between divine descent and interstellar landing is thinner than most people admit. As you stare, the golden veins begin to pulse faintly, as though responding to your heartbeat. You place a palm over one and feel warmth. Real warmth, not imagined. It spreads through your hand, up your arm, into your chest. The ice beneath you hums softly, and a shape begins to form within it. A figure vast and luminous rises like a memory breaking the surface of water. It's not male or female, not even human, but you sense recognition as if it's been waiting for you specifically. Its eyes are like twin suns seen through mist. You can't tell if it's communicating through sound or thought, but meaning floods into you. You have come to listen. You nod without speaking. Then listen. The mountain trembles, not in violence, but in vibration. The wind shifts pitch low to high, like the tuning of an unseen instrument. The light bends, folding around the figure, until it becomes pure radiance. Then images begin to flow, slow, deliberate, like ancient film reels projected onto snow. You see vast landscapes of green stretching under polar skies, forests, where reindeer and mammoths graze beside rivers that shimmer like silver veins. Cities impossibly clean, geometrically perfect, rise from the earth, their walls reflecting sunlight in harmonic patterns. There are people here, tall, serene, moving in slow, graceful motions, as if aware of the rhythm that holds the world together. They carry crystals not for decoration, but for resonance, using sound instead of force to shape matter. You realize this must be the legendary Hyperborean civilization, the one glimpsed in half myth, half memory. And yet there's sadness in the vision. The sun begins to dip. Shadows lengthen, and frost creeps back over those perfect streets. The people gather around luminous pillars, singing a long, low tone that vibrates the air itself. The figure's voice enters your mind again. We sang to keep the sun awake, but everything must rest, even light. You feel the ache of that sentence deep in your ribs. Even light must rest. Even gods must fade. Maybe that's why the Hyperboreans disappeared, not through destruction, but through surrender to stillness, the one force even divinity can't resist. Then the vision shifts again. You see something odd, smaller, rougher figures moving among the ruins long after the light has gone. They carry torches and carve strange runes into the ice. You recognize the shapes, Proto-Norse symbols, early Indo-European signs. Could this be the beginning of the myths that became Odin, Freyja, and Thor? Historians still argue whether the Norse pantheon was partly inherited from older Arctic deities. Echoes of Hyperborea, reshaped by new tongues and colder hearts. It would explain why so many northern gods bear solar or luminous attributes, even in lands where the sun rarely rises. And then a joke, uninvited but inevitable, crosses your mind. So basically, the Norse might have been ancient remix artists. You almost chuckle, imagining Odin as the world's first mythological DJ sampling celestial tracks from Hyperborea and adding thunder for drama. The thought makes you smile, but the light figure doesn't seem to mind. If anything, it glows a little brighter, as though amused by your audacity. Laughter is remembrance, it says. It means you still carry warmth. The vision begins to fade, colors melting back into silver white. You reach out, but your fingers touch only air. The mountain quiets. The warmth retreats into the ice, leaving only faint lines glowing where your hand had rested. You stand alone again beneath an endless sky that feels both larger and emptier than before. You take one last look at the plateau. The triangle of stars above you gleams sharply, its points perfectly aligned with the golden veins at your feet. You realize it's not a constellation, it's a compass. One point north, one east, one down. Down into the ice. The next part of the story isn't in the heavens, but beneath your feet. You take a slow breath. The mountain exhales with you, sending a gust of crystalline powder into the air. The figure's voice, faint now, whispers one last phrase before fading entirely. What falls asleep below still dreams. You step forward, eyes fixed on the faint golden light seeping into the cracks ahead. The wind softens. The world holds its breath, and you begin your descent downward into the dreaming ice of Hyperborea. The descent begins quietly. The light fades not into darkness, but into a deep sapphire hue that seems to come from within the ice itself. Your boots crunch through layers of frost that sound like breaking glass, and each breath releases a faint shimmer, as though the air here carries flecks of starlight. You are stepping into the frozen veins of Hyperborea, the underworld of the north, where light sleeps and time slows to a crawl. At first, the passage is narrow, almost claustrophobic. The walls curve inward, smooth and translucent, streaked with threads of pale gold that pulse like frozen lightning. You touch one, and it feels warm, alive. Beneath your palm, faint vibrations thrum like a heartbeat. You realize with a chill that the mountain isn't merely made of ice. It's a living archive storing not just light but memory itself. There's a story told by later mystics, those strange wanderers of the Hellenistic world who collected myths like seashells, that the Hyperboreans preserved their history not in books or carvings, but in frozen songs. Crystals, they said, that could store sound voices, laughter, even the last words of gods. Historians still argue whether such tales are symbolic or the garbled memory of some lost technology, perhaps related to natural resonance in ice structures. But as the walls hum softly around you, it doesn't feel symbolic at all. You pause and listen. The vibrations form patterns like music heard through water. A low tone rises first, steady, solemn, followed by higher notes that seem to circle you. Gradually a rhythm emerges and you recognize it a heartbeat. Not yours, not human. Something larger, slower. The heartbeat of the world itself. You close your eyes and let it guide you deeper. The tunnel widens into a vast chamber, a cathedral carved by eons. The ceiling arches high above, supported by pillars of translucent ice that glow faintly from within. The light is gentle here, pulsing in slow rhythm with the unseen heartbeat. You walk among the columns feeling like an ant inside the lungs of a sleeping god. Every sound, your footsteps, your breath echoes endlessly. At the center of the chamber stands a single monolith, dark, opaque, unlike the rest. It's made of something denser than ice, maybe obsidian, maybe something older. It hums at a lower frequency, so deep it's almost below hearing. You feel it more than you hear it vibrating in your chest. Curiosity wins, and you lay your hand on its surface. Instantly, visions flood your mind. You see a city beneath this very glacier, not dead, but dreaming. Towers rise from under the ice like transparent roots. Inside them, figures stand frozen in perfect stillness. Tall, luminous eyes closed, hands raised as if mid-song. You realize with a shock that they're not statues. They're people. The Hyperboreans didn't vanish, they slept. They surrendered to the cold to preserve themselves until the world was ready to remember them. And maybe you think that time is now. The monolith pulses again, sending a wave of heat through your fingertips. For a moment, the chamber around you shimmers, the ice melting into air. You're standing among them now, these still beings of light. They turn their heads slowly, eyes glowing faint gold. No malice, no fear, just recognition. One of them reaches out their fingers, brushing yours. The contact feels like a spark, like being plugged into an ancient memory drive. You see through their eyes the last days before the sleep. The sky dimming, the sun withdrawing, the once bright land sinking into endless winter. Panic, brief but profound, rippling through a civilization that had never known decay. Then a choice. Rather than perish, they sang a song, a frequency designed to slow time, to let their bodies drift into crystalline preservation. It was their farewell to the sun, their pact with the future. Historians still argue whether this legend was the seed of cryogenic myths that appear later in folklore, kings sleeping under mountains, heroes frozen until their return. Arthur in Avalon, Barbarossa in Kyffhäuser. Maybe all of them are faint echoes of this original northern slumber. A flicker of humor crosses your thoughts. You picture a Hyperborean in a cosmic freezer, leaving a note. Do not disturb until global warming. You smirk at the absurdity, but somehow it feels tragically fitting. The vision fades and you're back in the ice cathedral, breath misting in the cold air. The monolith is silent now, its hum gone. The pulse in the walls slows like a heartbeat settling into deep sleep again. You whisper softly, "I heard you." For a brief moment, a faint glow ripples across the chamber, an acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. As you prepare to leave, you notice small shapes embedded in the ice along the walls, spirals, circles, symbols arranged in repeating patterns. You realize they form a map, not of geography but of cycles: light, dark, life, rest. You trace one line and see it curve back to the top of the mountain, then dip downward again, a perpetual loop. The Hyperboreans didn't see history as linear. To them, everything was recurrence: exile and return, sleep and awakening. Your flashlight flickers, you forgot to turn it off. Somehow the battery survived this long. Its beam dances across the wall and reveals an engraving at eye level, a single inscription in an unknown script. Yet you understand it instinctively. The sun remembers. That phrase lodges itself in your mind. You can almost hear it sung in the same tone as the heartbeat that fills this place. It's not a prophecy, it's a promise. You turn toward the exit, retracing your steps through the corridor of light. The walls hum again, softly this time, like a lullaby. You imagine the sleeping Hyperboreans beneath your feet, their dreams flowing upward through the ice, reshaping themselves into myth and memory. Maybe every story humanity has ever told about lost golden ages, paradise beyond reach, or eternal return, maybe all of them are echoes of this. The tunnel narrows and the pale blue gives way to gold. The air warms slightly, though your breath still fogs. You glance back one last time, half expecting one of the frozen figures to open its eyes. But they don't. They're waiting. As you step back into the surface light, you whisper again, "The sun remembers." It feels like the kind of phrase that will follow you, that will show up in dreams, that might just mean something more when you least expect it. The mountain exhales. A gust of wind sends snow cascading from the ridge, erasing your footprints in seconds. The world above feels emptier, without the hum, but lighter somehow, like the silence after a symphony's final note. You look north where the horizon glows faintly gold and realize you've crossed into the second half of the journey. The gods above and the sleepers below have spoken. Now it's your turn to listen for what comes next. The northern lights shimmer above you, alive and aware, as if the heavens themselves are whispering a name that your human tongue has forgotten. You stand beneath the aurora, and it feels like being inside a living cathedral of green and violet fire. Each flicker burns a memory into your skin. The Hyperboreans called it the Veil of the Gods. They believed that through its shifting lights, divine beings crossed from one realm into another, brushing against mortal dreams. You feel that brush now, soft, curious, almost playful. It's a sensation that pulls you back into their mythology, where gods didn't descend from clouds, but emerged from the glow itself, their forms made of light and wind. Some scholars say that ancient descriptions of winged beings of the north might actually have come from travelers who saw the aurora and mistook it for divine wings. Historians still argue whether this veil mythology was purely symbolic or evidence of a real ancient cult centered around the sky. The wind hisses across frozen stones as you begin to understand why the Hyperboreans worshipped light itself. To them, darkness was not evil, it was the womb of illumination. They believed enlightenment wasn't found in temples, but in the silent observation of natural wonders. A glacier cracking a snowflake, forming an aurora unfolding, all were sermons in divine geometry. You look up and the stars pulse in slow rhythm. Somewhere in your memory, you recall the modern term electromagnetic energy, but to the ancients, it was living spirit. Their priests practiced sky listening, lying on icy fields, arms outstretched, waiting for celestial music. Greek poet Pindar once described Hyperboreans as the blessed people untouched by plague, who sing hymns to Apollo while the sun never sets. You might laugh a little, imagine trying to sleep in that perpetual daylight, right? But there's truth hidden in poetry. The Hyperboreans' connection with Apollo the sun god is one of the strangest threads in ancient myth. According to classical texts, Apollo left Delphi every winter to dwell among the Hyperboreans. What was he doing there? Taking a divine vacation? Or perhaps, as some historians speculate, Delphi's cult traced its origins to an even older solar religion from the Arctic Circle. The very idea upends geography, the god of sunlight retreating to the land of eternal night. Historians still argue whether this northern Delphi was metaphorical or literal. Was it a real ancient civilization in the polar regions? And yet fragments persist. Old Norse sagas speak of a luminous hall beyond the storm belt, where people lived without shadow. Early Russian folklore calls it Svyatogor's realm, the mountain of light. Even Plato hinted at a sacred northern race of philosophers. Each story hums with the same chord, a place where wisdom and light fuse. You imagine standing in that hall, columns of translucent ice glowing from within like frozen lightning. The walls sing faintly when touched, resonating with the same tone as the aurora above. Inside, robed figures move slowly, chanting words older than sound itself. Their faces are serene, illuminated not by torches, but by the natural radiance of the place. You reach out and feel warmth, not from fire, but from something subtler, as if the air itself remembers sunlight. Modern science might call it bioluminescence, or even plasma interaction. You chuckle under your breath. Try explaining that to an ancient priest. They would have said, "The gods are awake tonight." But beneath the wonder lies a question that still gnaws at archaeologists. How did so many separate cultures, Greek, Norse, Vedic, describe northern lights as a divine messenger? Could there have been cultural diffusion from a forgotten Arctic civilization? Or is humanity simply wired to see divinity in the dance of energy? Historians still argue whether the mythic North was ever truly inhabited or was a symbolic homeland of the soul. The ground beneath you hums softly. You crouch and touch the frozen earth. It vibrates faintly like a purring cat beneath glass. It's the magnetic pulse of the planet, the same energy that bends solar winds into curtains of color. The Hyperboreans might have sensed this rhythm through intuition. Their stone altars often align perfectly with magnetic anomalies. Coincidence? Maybe. But when every rock whispers northward, even skeptics start listening. A small smile crosses your lips. You remember the crocodile dung sunscreen of the Egyptians, a reminder that not every ancient idea aged well. Yet here, the Hyperboreans' obsession with light feels timeless. Maybe they understood something we've forgotten, that all things gods, humans, stars, are just frequencies at play. Suddenly, the aurora flickers harder, flaring like a living heartbeat. You squint and swear you see shapes moving within it. Silhouettes of tall beings' hair flowing upward as if swimming through sky water. Their eyes glint like polished obsidian. You want to tell yourself it's just refraction, but something inside whispers they see you too. It's gone in an instant. The lights settle into gentle swirls again, leaving only silence and the faint hum of the magnetic north. You exhale slowly, realizing your breath makes tiny clouds of fog that twist into shapes before dissolving. The gods of the north, it seems, are good at teasing mortals. You continue walking the snow, crunching beneath your boots. The night feels less like darkness now, and more like a living presence, vast, breathing aware. You think about how every ancient myth might be a coded message from those who once stood right here, staring up in awe, just as you do now. The aurora brightens one last time, painting your shadow long across the ice. It feels like a blessing, or perhaps a reminder that the legacy of Hyperborea isn't about gods in the sky, but about humans daring to look up and wonder. The wind carries a low, melodic hum, part air, part memory. You realize it's not coming from outside at all. It's in your chest, resonating softly, as if the ancient north has chosen to remember itself through you. The morning comes slowly, if you can even call it morning. In this far north, light doesn't rise, it seeps. The sky melts from indigo to silver, as if some great hand poured moonlight into day. You blink against the soft glare, and for a moment you can't tell where the horizon ends and the heavens begin. That's when you realize why the ancients called this place the borderless realm. The Hyperboreans believed this perpetual half-light was divine balance, the union of night and day, chaos and order. As your eyes adjust, you notice something strange beneath the frost, circular patterns carved into stone, faint yet deliberate. Spirals, triangles, concentric rings, symbols that echo those found in Neolithic sites across the globe. Historians still argue whether these markings are evidence of an interconnected prehistoric culture or just humanity's shared fascination with geometry. But here in the ghost-white quiet, you sense design. You crouch to trace one of the carvings. It's cold, sharper than expected, like it was made not by human hands, but by something more precise, perhaps using tools we haven't yet rediscovered. Fringe researchers love to whisper about ancient sonic technology, claiming the Hyperboreans shaped stone using resonance instead of force. Sounds wild, but so does Wi-Fi to someone from the Bronze Age. You stand again, squinting into the distance. The snowfield stretches endlessly, but something catches your eye, a faint line of raised earth, perfectly straight, cutting through the landscape. You follow it step by careful step until the wind parts the snow enough to reveal a road. Not made of cobblestone or dirt, but of fused rock, smooth as glass, shimmering faintly with mineral light. You laugh under your breath. Yeah, sure, you mutter, an ancient highway in the Arctic. Totally normal. Still, the line continues straight to the horizon, and curiosity pulls you onward. Every few meters, the ground hums faintly beneath your feet, like buried circuits waking up. Maybe it's the Earth's magnetism again, or maybe something older still breathes down there. The road leads to a rise, and as you crest it, you gasp. Below lies a vast depression in the ice, perfectly circular, miles across. At its center stands a colossal ring of pillars, each one taller than a skyscraper, all made of the same fused stone. Some are cracked and leaning, but most still stand proud, defying time and temperature alike. The structure reminds you of Stonehenge, if Stonehenge had been built by deities with an architectural degree. Historians still argue whether structures like this are myth or metaphor, yet here you are staring at something that hums with undeniable intent. The pillars are etched with intricate lines, some geometric, others flowing like written language. You run a glove over one and feel warmth, faint but real, radiating from within. It's impossible not to think of ancient myths about singing stones. Celtic legends spoke of rocks that spoke to those pure of heart. Norse sagas mentioned rune pillars that glowed under moonlight. And the Hyperborean tablets lost to time, but referenced in Orphic hymns, supposedly told of a great circular temple where humans conversed with the gods. You wonder if you're standing inside that story right now. The wind picks up, carrying a sound like distant chanting. You turn, but there's no one. Only the whisper of snow sliding down ancient faces of stone. Then something else. A flash of gold buried halfway beneath ice near the base of a pillar. You kneel and brush away frost. It's a fragment of metal, curved, engraved with a pattern that matches the carvings on the stone. You lift it, and it hums softly in your palm, almost as if recognizing your touch. You grin nervously. Please don't be alien tech, you mumble. I still haven't finished paying off my phone. It's warm, unnaturally so, and seems to vibrate with rhythm. You press it gently to your ear and hear faint tones, musical harmonic, like a choir filtered through static. For a moment you imagine the entire structure as a vast instrument, an architectural symphony built to tune the world. Maybe the Hyperboreans didn't worship their gods here, they played them. Some fringe theorists argue that sacred sites across the world, Egypt's pyramids, Malta's temples, even the layout of Angkor Wat, share a mathematical harmony designed to resonate with planetary frequencies. What if Hyperborea was the prototype? A civilization that used sound not for communication, but for communion with the earth, the sky, the divine. Historians still argue whether such acoustic architecture was intentional or mere coincidence. But as the tone in your hand shifts, becoming clearer, you realize coincidence feels a little inadequate. The air thickens. Light bends. The aurora above flickers faint but persistent even in daylight, and suddenly the pillars hum in unison. Snow lifts off the ground, swirling gently around you, spiraling upward like luminous smoke. For a heartbeat, the entire circle vibrates like a struck bell. The sound isn't loud, it's deep, the kind that bypasses your ears and goes straight into your bones. You feel your pulse sink to it. Your breath slows. Your vision sharpens. In that instant, you understand why ancient texts spoke of Hyperborea as a place where mortals could hear the heart of creation. Maybe it wasn't metaphor. Maybe they literally tuned themselves to the planet's frequency, a resonance so perfect it erased pain, fear, and ego. And then silence. The pillars still. The light fades. The fragment in your hand cools inert once more. You're left standing in the middle of the great circle, alone but vibrating with memory. You exhale, half laughing, half awed. Well, you say softly, that was something. The words vanish into the cold. You pocket the fragment and begin walking toward the far side of the circle. There's an opening there, a tunnel leading into the earth, its entrance shaped like a gaping mouth. You hesitate. The myths said Hyperborea had no death, no sickness, no decay. But maybe that was only above ground. What waits below might be something different altogether. Still, curiosity wins. You tighten your scarf, take one last look at the silent pillars, and step into the dark. The tunnel breathes. You swear it does. The air isn't still. It moves in gentle pulses as if the mountain itself inhales and exhales around you. The stone walls glisten with frost, but underneath the ice you can see a strange shimmer, almost metallic. The deeper you go, the more you feel like you're walking through the throat of some vast, sleeping creature. Your flashlight beam dances over carvings, long, winding lines that seem to move when the light shifts. Spirals within spirals. A few resemble constellations, others symbols that match what you saw on the pillars above. One carving stops you cold, a human figure standing between two towering beings of light, hands outstretched, rays pouring from its chest. Beneath it, the same phrase appears over and over again, though written in scripts from different eras. Greek runic, even Proto-Sanskrit. You whisper it aloud. Thule. The word echoes softly down the tunnel, and the walls hum in response. You freeze. Thule, the legendary northern land spoken of by the Greeks, believed to be the edge of the known world. Historians still argue whether it referred to Iceland, Greenland, or some long-lost Arctic continent. But here, deep under the frozen ground, the word feels like a key one that unlocks something older than maps. You continue downward, and the hum grows stronger. It's not unpleasant. It's warm, like the resonance of a cello inside your chest. Every few meters, small alcoves appear in the walls, each containing crystalline structures that glimmer faintly with internal light. They remind you of quartz formations, except these are too symmetrical, almost engineered. Fringe theorists often claim ancient civilizations used crystals as energy conduits. You used to roll your eyes at that idea. but right now it doesn't seem so far-fetched. You brush your fingers against one of the crystals, and it lights up instantly, projecting faint images onto the wall. For a moment, you see moving shapes, cities of glass towers rising through mist oceans glowing with aurora-colored light. The vision fades just as quickly, leaving you breathless. You chuckle nervously. "Okay," you mutter. "So this place comes with holograms?" Nice touch. A few steps later, the tunnel opens into a vast chamber. The air is warmer here, thick with the scent of ozone and something floral, like crushed pine and cold rain. In the center of the space rises a column of translucent ice glowing from within. Around it are more of the crystal formations, all angled toward the central pillar like worshippers at prayer. As you approach, you notice figures, statues, life-sized, perhaps even larger. They're carved from the same translucent material, posed in gestures of contemplation, one with hands folded, another with eyes lifted upward. But the detail, it's uncanny. You can see pores, the weave of fabric, even faint emotion in their faces. For a moment, a chill runs down your spine. Are these really statues, or something else entirely? You remember a half-forgotten Norse myth about the ice sleepers, divine beings preserved beneath the northern glaciers, awaiting the dawn of a new world. The myth was always dismissed as poetic fancy. Yet staring at these figures frozen mid-thought, you can't help but wonder if it was memory disguised as myth. Historians still argue whether such legends stem from encounters with ancient cryogenic remains or simple storytelling. You circle the chamber slowly. The light inside the pillar pulses in rhythm with your steps, as though responding to your heartbeat. You reach out, hesitating only a second, then press your palm against the ice. Instantly, your vision fractures. The world around you dissolves into streaks of color and sound, rushing, roaring, singing all at once. You see flashes, cities suspended in clouds, people of radiant skin walking beneath crystal arches, and a sun that never sets. They speak without words, their thoughts flowing directly into yours, a single phrase echoing again and again. "We remember through you." Then it's gone. You're on your knees, gasping, the chamber silent again. The ice pillar glows faintly, steady now, like a heartbeat returned to rest. You whisper, "Was that memory? Maybe. Or maybe you just hallucinated on ancient air. But part of you knows better. The Hyperboreans might have found a way to store consciousness itself, encoding memory into crystalline structures. Some fringe archaeologists have proposed that idea, that ancient temples were more like data vaults holding fragments of thought preserved in matter. Ridiculous, maybe, but your bones tell you otherwise. You laugh softly. Guess the world's first hard drive was made of ice. The chamber hums again, faintly amused. Or maybe that's just your imagination, trying to stay sane. You notice something else. Now the statues seem slightly different. Their expressions have softened eyes, no longer fixed forward, but subtly tilted toward you. You stand quickly. "Nope. Nope, not today," you murmur, taking a cautious step back. But even as you retreat, you can't shake the feeling that they're watching not with hostility, but recognition. You turn and head toward a smaller passage on the far side of the chamber. The air there feels older, heavier. The walls glint with faint runes glowing blue under your light. Each one pulses when you pass, creating a rhythm like a heartbeat, counting time backward. You realize the symbols form a path, one that spirals deeper underground. You follow. The descent grows steeper, and soon you're half sliding down smooth corridors, your breath visible in the warm, misty air. Somewhere ahead you hear the steady drip of water, and something like machinery. It's faint but distinct, a low, mechanical thrum. When the passage finally opens, you find yourself on the edge of an enormous cavern. Below you stretches what looks like an underground sea, its surface still and glassy, reflecting veins of bioluminescent light that snake across the cavern walls. In the center, half buried in ice, is something unmistakably artificial, a massive structure, circular, metallic, ancient, yet impossibly advanced. You whisper, awe-struck. So, the heart of Hyperborea wasn't a city. It was a machine. A soft laugh escapes you, equal parts fear and wonder. Of course it was. Why wouldn't it be? The hum you heard above is stronger here, deeper, almost melodic. The entire cavern seems alive, pulsing gently to its rhythm. You realize that maybe, just maybe, the Hyperboreans didn't build this under their world. Maybe they built their world around it. The thought sends a shiver down your spine. You take one last deep breath, knowing there's no going back now. The path forward glows faintly beneath your feet, leading straight toward the heart of the machine. And so you walk into the final echo of the gods. The path descends like a silver serpent, glowing faintly beneath the snow-dusted stone. Your boots echo against the metallic surface, the sound absorbed almost instantly by the cavern's vast silence. The air here feels denser, heavy with static, as if you're moving through liquid electricity. You can taste iron on your tongue. Ahead, the machine waits, half buried in luminous ice, older than memory, yet impossibly alive. It's circular, colossal, at least a kilometer wide. The outer walls glimmer with strange inscriptions, neither purely symbolic nor linguistic, more like formulas that breathe. Each line curves gracefully, forming fractal spirals that seem to expand the more you stare. Historians still argue whether such patterns, seen in ancient art across continents, represent primitive decoration or some universal geometric knowledge. You're starting to think it's the latter. You step closer. The hum you've followed for hours now becomes a chorus, low, resonant, almost like chanting. The ice around the structure vibrates gently, shedding faint dust that sparkles like powdered stars. You reach the nearest wall and press your hand against the metal. Warm. Too warm. Then movement. Lines of light race beneath your palm, rippling outward like veins awakening under skin. The cavern trembles, and you instinctively stumble back as enormous runes flare to life, bathing the chamber in shifting colors. For a moment you feel small, like an insect inside the gears of a sleeping god. A voice deep and melodic fills your mind. It's not speech, it's meaning. You don't hear words so much as understand them directly. Welcome, traveler of the returning age. The song remembers you. Your pulse quickens. Okay, you whisper aloud, so we've officially moved past archaeology. The lights pulse again, and parts of the machine begin to shift. Massive panels slide away, revealing intricate layers beneath rings within rings, slowly rotating. At the center, a vertical column rises from the ice, haloed by mist. It looks like an enormous tuning fork, humming at a pitch that makes your chest vibrate. And then you realize it's not mechanical at all. It's organic. The surface pulses faintly translucent, revealing veins of light inside flowing like liquid mercury. You step closer despite the tremor in your legs. Are you alive, you ask? The hum deepens, and the voice returns not in your ears but everywhere, diffused through the air itself. We are memory. We are pattern. We are what endures when gods sleep. You swallow hard, your rational brain waving a white flag. Right. Memory, of course. Totally normal. A flicker of humor escapes your lips, but the awe outweighs fear now. You glance around, the bioluminescent sea ripples in sync with the voice, as if responding to it. Maybe the entire cavern is part of the same entity. Maybe Hyperborea wasn't just a civilization, it was alive. You hear a distant echo of an old myth that the gods of the north were not beings of flesh and bone, but manifestations of the planet itself. conscious patterns of energy that guided humanity before fading into legend. Historians still argue whether such stories describe extraterrestrial visitors' spiritual archetypes, or simply the poetic imagination of early man. But standing here, you start to see another possibility, that gods were never separate from the earth. They were the earth aware and articulate for a brief golden age. The voice hums again, and an image forms in your mind, not a vision this time, but a memory. You see oceans boiling into mist, continents shifting, and this very machine alive and glowing, singing into the storm. A catastrophe unfolds, sky-fire quakes, ice swallowing everything. Yet the voice continues to sing, preserving what it can. Not in stone, not in books, but in resonance. Then the image fades, leaving you trembling. You whisper, "You survived the end." "Survival is a human word," the voice replies. "We persisted as harmony. The flesh forgot. The pattern waits." The realization lands like a stone in your stomach. You're not inside ruins. You're inside a memory vault. A living archive encoded in vibration. The Hyperboreans might not have vanished at all, they transformed. They became pure frequency, stored within this machine, waiting for someone to listen. You laugh shakily. So basically, you're the universe's first cloud backup. The hum shifts, almost amused, if that word comforts you. You take another step toward the central column. The air thickens your skin, prickling with static. The closer you get, the more memories flood your mind, images, emotions, even sensations that aren't yours. You see a woman with silver eyes standing at the edge of a frozen sea, raising her hands to the sun. You hear choirs chanting in a language that sounds like wind and thunder. You feel the warmth of an eternal dawn that never ended. The voice softens. "Do you remember what light is?" You blink, unsure how to answer. "It's energy." "No," it says gently. "It is memory traveling without shadow." You let the words sink in. They feel like poetry, but somehow also like physics. Maybe both. The floor beneath you trembles again, this time lighter, almost like a heartbeat. The massive rings begin rotating faster, generating spirals of faint mist that rise toward the cavern's ceiling. The hum climbs an octave, harmonizing with the faint whisper of wind above ground. You realize the machine isn't just awakening, it's tuning itself to the planet once more. A flicker of fear returns. If you're waking up, you ask what happens to us. The voice pauses for what feels like a long time. Then softly, "We do not return to rule. We return to remind." Something in that answer calms you. The light within the column dims slightly, steadying into a tranquil pulse. You exhale, relieved and curious. "Remind us of what?" The response comes like a whisper carried on music, that you are not lost, only out of tune. You stand there speechless. The words linger in the air, weaving themselves into meaning far deeper than they seem. Maybe that's what all myths try to tell us, not that gods rule us, but that harmony is possible, and we forgot the melody. The voice fades slowly, its final echo, a faint vibration against your ribs. You touch the column one last time, and a thin strand of light extends from it, coiling gently around your wrist before dissolving into your skin. It leaves behind a faint warmth, like sunlight remembered in winter. You realize you've been accepted not as a priest or explorer, but as part of the pattern. The resonance hums faintly inside you, a new heartbeat layered over your own. You can't help but smile. Guess I'm part of the band now. The cavern quiets, the great machine's glow settling into a soft rhythm. Somewhere behind you, a tunnel opens, leading upward, a path carved by the returning pulse. You take one last look at the ancient heart of Hyperborea before stepping toward the light. You emerge from the tunnel into what feels like another world. The air is colder, crisper, each breath cutting clean through the fog of the deep chamber's warmth. The snow outside glows faintly blue beneath the light of a sun just grazing the horizon. For a moment you forget to move. The landscape before you is vast and alien, yet heartbreakingly beautiful. Everything hums. The ice, the air, even the shadows. It's subtle, an almost imperceptible vibration, but after what you've experienced, you know it's not your imagination. The resonance of Hyperborea hasn't stayed underground. It's spreading, threading through the earth, like a melody returning to the surface after millennia of silence. You take a tentative step onto the frozen plain. The snow beneath your boots vibrates in response. You half expect it to start singing back, and when a faint bell-like note actually rings out, you laugh aloud. Okay, that's mildly terrifying, but kind of wonderful. You start walking toward the distant ridge where the aurora still dances weakly in the sky, a pale ghost of last night's fire. The warmth in your wrist, the one where the light touched you, beats faintly pulsing in time with the distant rhythm of the world. You feel different, not in the grand chosen one sense, but in the quiet way that awareness changes everything. Maybe this was what the Hyperboreans meant by enlightenment, not some divine revelation, but a recalibration. A tuning of human spirit back to nature's original frequency. You remember that phrase from the voice, "You are not lost, only out of tune." It echoes in your head as you walk. The ridge comes closer, revealing a panoramic view of frozen valleys, their surfaces fractured like veins of quartz. At the far edge, you spot something glinting, an obelisk half buried in snow, its sides carved with the same fractal geometry as the underground machine. When you brush the frost away, a familiar pattern reveals itself. Concentric circles radiating outward from a central spiral. You realize suddenly that you've seen this symbol before, etched into prehistoric stones in Scotland, drawn into cave walls in Siberia, carved into the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe. Historians still argue whether those patterns were purely decorative or cosmological, but standing here, you understand. They weren't trying to imitate the heavens, they were trying to remember the frequency. A gust of wind tears across the ridge, carrying with it a sound like distant singing. You freeze. It's not coming from below or from the air itself, but from far across the ice, voices faint but distinct, layered in harmonic intervals. You strain to listen. The melody is simple, repetitive, soothing, almost human. You start walking toward it, boots crunching in rhythm. The closer you get, the clearer it becomes, a chant of vowels rising and falling like waves. Finally, through the shimmer of drifting snow, you see them. Figures half a dozen at first, then more, moving slowly in a wide circle around a stone altar. Their faces are obscured by hoods, but their robes glisten faintly in the cold light woven with threads of reflective silver. You stop watching in disbelief. They notice you yet. No one runs, no one speaks. One of them, a tall figure whose robe trails like mist, raises an arm and gestures for you to come closer. You hesitate for a moment, then step forward, heart pounding. As you draw near, you notice something strange. The air around them feels warmer. The snow underfoot has melted into bare rock, steaming faintly. Their chant grows softer, then stops altogether. The tall figure lowers their hood. The face beneath is ageless, not young, not old, features fine and calm. Eyes a pale shade of gold that catches the light like metal. Their expression is kind, though unreadable. When they speak, their voice carries the same melodic tone you felt in the cavern below. You've come from the heart, they say. Not a question, an acknowledgement. You nod slowly. You knew I was there. We felt the pulse return. It was time. You glance at the others. They stand silently watching, not suspicious but reverent, as if they already know the story of you. "Who are you?" you ask softly. The tall figure smiles. "Children of memory, keepers of the tone. You would call us descendants, though the line between blood and resonance has long since blurred." You blink, trying to process. "So, you're Hyperboreans." "Not as we were," they reply. "We remember them as dreamers remember themselves upon waking. We keep their harmony up in song, in silence, in the trembling of the snow." They reach out and place a hand over your wrist, exactly where the light entered you. The mark glows faintly beneath their touch. The tone chose you. You carry it now. You must carry it further. A quiet dread mixes with awe. Carry it where it's been forgotten. Their gaze lifts toward the horizon, the same direction you came from, toward the world beyond the ice. The tone fades in your cities. You build towers that hum without harmony, machines that speak without listening. You've confused noise with creation. Their words cut deep, not as judgment, but truth. You think of the endless hum of traffic, the static of screens, the drone of voices online. All the sound and yet so little resonance. You whisper, "What happens if we don't remember?" The tall figure's golden eyes soften. The earth will still sing. You simply won't hear it. Silence falls between you, heavy but not hopeless. Then, almost casually, they smile. "You're welcome to stay, of course, but you won't." The tone rarely allows rest. You laugh quietly. That's surprisingly honest for a mystical being. They chuckle too, an unexpectedly human sound. Humor endures longer than empires. A gentle warmth spreads through your chest. You understand now that this encounter isn't meant to answer questions, but to plant one more. The Hyperborean Legacy isn't about gods who ruled from the north. It's about remembering the frequency that once connected everything. The figure steps back. "Go," they say, softly. "The world will need its melody again." As you turn away, the chant resumes, low harmonic, echoing through the frozen valley. You walk toward the distant light of dawn, each step resonating faintly with the rhythm of the earth beneath you. Somewhere far below, the machine hums again, perfectly in tune. The horizon glows pale gold as you walk. The snow softens beneath your steps, and for the first time the air doesn't sting your lungs. It welcomes you, like breath returning to the world. You keep moving toward the sun, though its warmth feels faint and unreachable. Behind you, the chant fades, swallowed by distance, until all that's left is silence, and yet not silence at all. Beneath that quiet, you hear the pulse. Slow, eternal, patient. The mark on your wrist flickers once, then steadies. You glance at it, smiling faintly. Maybe it's nothing more than a trick of blood and light. Maybe it's something older, something watching, guiding. Either way, it feels alive. Your mind drifts as you walk. You remember that first question, the one that drew you into this journey. Who were the gods of the north? Were they flesh and bone, or merely echoes carved into myth? Now you're not sure it matters. Maybe they were both. Maybe that's what truth looks like in this world, a bridge between the impossible and the inevitable. A gust of wind carries fragments of voices, ancient whispers tangled in the air like threads. Words you can't translate, but whose meaning you somehow feel we never left. Historians still argue whether Hyperborea ever existed a real civilization, a lost continent, or just a metaphor for spiritual awakening. They debate maps, measure myths, and dissect old poetry. Some claim it was a Greek fantasy of paradise. Others insist it encoded the memory of a polar homeland before the ice. None agree. And maybe that's the point. Hyperborea was never meant to be pinned to coordinates. It was meant to move, to migrate through story, through memory, through you. You crest the ridge and see far ahead a dark line on the horizon. Civilization. Roads. Steel. The hum of electricity barely audible through the wind. You're back at the edge of the modern world. It looks the same as when you left, but something deep inside has shifted. The sky feels heavier, full of history. The ground hums with unseen resonance. A raven lands on a nearby stone, black feathers glistening. It tilts its head watching you. You can't help but grin. You again. It croaks once as if confirming, then takes flight, circling 3 times before disappearing into the light. You follow. The terrain changes gradually. Snow thinning into frost, frost into mud, then into dry, cracked soil. A few scraggly trees appear, branches twisted by the cold. Eventually the ice gives way entirely to grass, yellow and brittle, but alive. You pause and look back. The north lies behind you, vast, shimmering, eternal. A place no map could ever capture. You realize you're not meant to return there, not physically. You're meant to carry its music forward, to weave it into a world that's forgotten how to listen. The hum beneath your feet grows stronger the closer you get to civilization. Power lines crackle. A distant radio stutters to life somewhere. For a moment, the overlapping noises threaten to drown everything out. But if you focus, you can hear it, the hidden note beneath the static. The tone, the one that began beneath the ice. You stop walking and just listen. Somewhere in the wind you hear laughter, soft, distant, familiar. The Hyperborean figure's voice echoes faintly. Humor endures longer than empires. You laugh too quietly. Guess we'll test that. You reach a small town at dusk. The neon signs buzz, faintly lights flickering in rhythm with invisible frequencies. People pass by, faces, tired eyes, half-focused, each carrying their own quiet storms. None of them notice you, but as you move through the streets, a few turn suddenly frowning slightly, as if hearing something they can't explain. A ripple in the ordinary. You hum softly at first, then louder. The tone vibrates against the city's mechanical heartbeat. A child nearby looks up from a phone, smiling without knowing why. Somewhere a dog starts to howl in harmony. And for a fleeting second you swear you hear the world hum back. You realize this is what the Hyperboreans were trying to preserve, not a kingdom of ice, but a way of being. A remembrance that everything stone, sky, blood, sound is part of one endless vibration. And the moment you stop chasing it and start listening, you become part of it again. You stand still, letting the noise of the city flow around you. Cars, voices, machinery, life. It's all rhythm. You close your eyes and breathe. The line between the mythic north and the modern world dissolves not in geography, but in awareness. You understand at last that Hyperborea was never lost. It was buried inside the human mind, waiting for someone curious enough to hear its resonance through the noise. Maybe that someone is you, and maybe as you listen now, it starts again. The hum deepens, slow, steady, warm. The sky above the city flickers aurora-like for just a heartbeat. Then everything quiets, perfectly balanced. The world exhales. The pulse continues beneath your skin, steady as breath. You smile, whispering into the cold air, "I hear you." And for a moment, impossibly, the air whispers back. The rhythm slows, the light softens, snow falls again, not in storms, but in lazy, drifting spirals that melt before they touch the ground. You stand at the edge of waking where dream and daylight overlap. The sound that guided you through the north fades into a calm hush, like a heartbeat settling after a long journey. You think of everything that's past the ancient halls of ice, the glowing symbols, the faces that watched without age. None of it feels distant. It feels folded inside you as if you've carried it all along. The gods of the north were never gods at all. They were memory-made music waiting to be remembered through you. Each step, each sound, each breath has led back here to the quiet understanding that the sacred was never far away. The world hums faintly still, but it no longer feels separate. The snow, the wind, the endless turning of the stars, it's all part of the same tone. You listen once more, then let it go. A final breeze brushes your face, gentle as a sigh. You open your eyes to the fading glow of the horizon, feeling at peace with not knowing everything. Some mysteries are meant to sing quietly in the background, shaping the silence rather than breaking it. You take one last deep breath. The tone lingers, then softly it dissolves. The story rests. The pulse continues.